Years ago, I have this memory when I was sitting in traffic one morning, in the rush to get to work, my coffee made next to me, listening to an Audi on my playlist, just another day. Then a car swerved in front of me and cut in, and in a second, my calm completely vanished. My heart was racing, my jaw was clenched, all that tension was in my body. I felt a surge of anger that wasn't in proportion with what had just happened, but I couldn't switch it off. It stayed with me. Later that day, there was then this passing comment from my manager at the time. It was when I was managing projects in the tech world, and he commented that I needed to stay ahead of the issues rather than reacting to them. So to me, that landed personally, and it implied I wasn't on top of things. Nonetheless, I smiled and then said, "No problem." And then later that night, I lay awake, replaying his words, convincing myself I wasn't good enough. These reactions felt automatic, they felt intense and disproportionate. And for a long time, I didn't understand why, until I realised something powerful. I wasn't just reacting to the moment. I was reacting from a childhood where I hadn't felt emotionally safe. Once I learned to see those triggers for what they were, echoes of my childhood, that's when healing really began. I'm a chartered psychologist who has spent well over a decade working with people trying to make sense of their pain and their reactions. People who looked like they had it all together, successful, capable, yet inside they felt anxious and disconnected or stuck in the same old patterns that they couldn't name. I've seen what truly helps people heal and what quietly keeps them trapped. And honestly, I've had to face those same patterns in my own life too. It's that combination, professional understanding and personal experience, that motivates me to share what I've learned about what really works. Because understanding ourselves isn't just some abstract idea, it's how we find peace, it's how we find freedom. So, a client once told me that he felt like he was living two lives. At work, he never turned down extra responsibility. He covered shifts, took on projects, said yes, even when he was already overwhelmed. And at home, he would agree to plans that he didn't have enough energy for. He avoided disagreements because he couldn't bear the feeling of letting someone down. Eventually, he became burnt out and emotionally distant. He thought the problem was poor time management, but as we explored his history, we found a childhood where approval was inconsistent, where love felt safer when he was useful, agreeable and good. So his adult life became organised around one unconscious rule: don't disappoint anyone, or you might lose connection. So here's something most people don't realise. Your childhood isn't just something that happened in the past. It lives in your nervous system. It shows up when your chest tightens because someone changed their tone, in the way you stay silent when you want to actually speak, or react intensely to the smallest hint of rejection. Childhood doesn't just create memories, it creates long-lasting patterns. And until you understand that, you may keep asking yourself, why can't I just move on? Healing begins when you start working with those patterns differently. Here's step one: see the wound beneath the behaviour. Most people try to change that behaviour first. The anxiety, the anger, the avoidance, the habits they feel ashamed of. And wanting relief makes sense, of course, we all want that. But here's the shift that changes everything. The behaviour isn't the real problem. It was once a survival solution. When a child grows up without emotional safety, when love feels unpredictable or conditional, the nervous system adapts. It becomes hyper alert. It learns to read moods and tension. It learns to stay quiet, to perform, to please, to fight, or to shut down. Not because the child is weak, but because the child is intelligent, trying to survive. Underneath adult patterns, there are often unmet needs. The need to feel safe, seen, loved without having to earn it and perform. So instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Try asking, what did I need that I didn't receive? Healing begins with compassion, not judgment. Here's step two: rewire your nervous system's sense of safety. Insight alone doesn't change deep patterns. If it did, one therapy session or one honest conversation would be enough, wouldn't it? But the most powerful learning in childhood happened in the body, long before you had words to explain what you were feeling. So today, you can know you're safe and still feel anxious, overwhelmed, and shut down. So real change happens when your nervous system starts to experience safety differently. It's your nervous system that needs to understand. That's where body-based practices matter. Mindfulness, for example, isn't just about relaxation. When it's practiced consistently, it helps you notice the rise of anxiety. It helps you to become aware of that tightening in your chest and that urge to withdraw or to react without immediately being controlled by it. You begin to create a pause, and in that pause, you get a choice. Many of us never had someone who helped us regulate overwhelming emotions as a child. So we're learning that skill now. The ability to stay present with difficult feelings without being consumed by them is one of the foundations of healing. Step 3, heal through relationship and new experiences. The wound was created in relationship, and healing happens there too. You cannot think your way out of relational pain in isolation. From the beginning of life, we regulate each other emotionally. When that experience was inconsistent or unsafe, something inside you may still expect relationships to be dangerous, and that's unconscious. One of the most powerful healing experiences is being fully seen and discovering the other person stays. Safe relationships begin to challenge the old story you carry about yourself, a story about whether you are lovable, whether people can be trusted, whether your needs matter. Over time, new experiences deposit new emotional evidence. And as this happens, your life may start to change externally too. You become less willing to stay in environments where you have to shrink, less willing to perform for acceptance. Healing begins to shape your choices, your relationships, and your future. Step 4 then. Process what was never fully processed. Trauma doesn't just create painful memories, it can freeze experiences in the nervous system. That's why years later, a tone of voice, a smell, a certain expression or look can trigger reactions that feel overwhelming and out of proportion. And in those moments, your body isn't responding to the present, it's actually responding to the past as if it's happening now. This is where the deeper therapeutic work can be really transformative and life-changing. One of the approaches I use, for example, is EMDR. That stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I remember a client processing a childhood memory from years ago that they had avoided, and it was a moment when their home suddenly felt very frightening and unsafe with the people around them, and even talking about it made their body tense and their breathing shallow. And during the EMDR process, something began to shift. Their breathing slowed, their posture softened, and eventually they said, almost surprised actually, "I now know I'm safe." The memory didn't disappear, but it lost its power. It became something that happened instead of something that they were still trapped inside of. Sometimes the deepest shift is when a person realizes, not just intellectually, but emotionally, that it wasn't my fault. And when that happens, everything starts to change. Here's step 5, grieve and reparent the parts of you that were hurt. One of the most underestimated parts of healing is allowing yourself to grieve what you didn't receive. Many of us were taught to minimize pain, to be grateful, to move on. What isn't grieved doesn't disappear. It can show up later as anxiety, anger, numbness, or disconnection. Grief is not the same as blame. You can acknowledge that your caregivers did what they could and still mourn what you needed and didn't get. This work is also about reparenting though, learning to meet the younger parts of yourself with patience and protection. When you stop fighting your emotions and start listening to them, your inner world becomes safer. And when grief moves through you fully, something profound happens. You stop waiting unconsciously for the past to be different. You become more available for the life that is here now. So here's what I want to leave you with. Healing is possible. I've seen people who felt completely broken rebuild their lives. Not perfectly, of course not overnight, but in ways that are meaningful and that changed who they became and who they wanted to be. Because what you get back is yourself.